Today you disappear from this school forever. The words hang in the air like a death sentence as Braden Cross leans across the cafeteria table, his steel gray eyes boring into Dakota Rivers with the cold certainty of someone who has never been told no. His voice carries the casual authority of inherited power, each syllable calculated to strip away hope and replace it with fear. Behind him, Landon Hayes captures every moment on his phone while Colton Reed cracks his knuckles with sounds like breaking branches. Dakota's hand wrapped around her turkey sandwich, trembling. The sudden stillness spreads up her arm like a circuit switching off, transforming nervous energy into something far more dangerous. Her blue eyes shift from fearful to completely empty as she meets Braden's gaze with an expression that makes him unconsciously lean back in his chair. 3 hours earlier, she whispers, her voice carrying a different quality now, one that makes the hairs on Colton's massive arms stand up despite his confusion about why. The morning sun streams through the tall windows of Millbrook High School as students flood through the main entrance. Their conversations mixing into the familiar symphony of teenage life. Backpacks slam against lockers, sneakers squeak against polished floors, and somewhere in the distance, the first bell warns of classes beginning in 15 minutes. Dakota Rivers moves through this chaos like a ghost. Her oversized gray jacket hanging loose around her slender frame, the fabric carefully arranged to conceal everything except her hands and face. At 17, she possesses the kind of natural beauty that should attract attention. Her shoulder-length brown hair catching the light as she walks, her blue eyes alert despite the exhaustion that seems permanently etched beneath them. She chooses a locker in the far corner of the main hallway, away from the clusters of students who have already formed their social circles during the first month of school. Her combination lock clicks open with practiced efficiency as she exchanges textbooks with movements that suggest muscle memory rather than conscious thought. Everything about her posture screams, "Leave me alone," while simultaneously hinting at depths that most teenagers simply don't possess. The photograph tucked inside her locker door shows a man in military dress uniform, his smile warm despite the formal setting. Staff Sergeant Michael Rivers. According to the nameplate visible in the image, though Dakota's eyes linger on his face rather than his rank, her fingers trace the edge of the photo with a gentle reverence, reserved for sacred things before she closes the locker and blends back into the stream of students heading to first period. If you're already sensing that Dakota's quiet exterior is hiding something powerful, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories, where appearances can be very deceiving. These tales of hidden strength always surprise us. American history unfolds in room 204 with the predictable rhythm of public education. Mrs. Patterson drones through the Revolutionary War while Dakota takes notes in handwriting that would impress a calligrapher. Each letter formed with precision that suggests training far beyond standard curriculum. Her jacket remains zipped despite the classroom's warmth, and she keeps her sleeves pulled down over her wrists with conscious effort. 2 rows behind her, Braden Cross studies her profile with the focused attention of a predator evaluating prey. As the son of Senator William Cross, he moves through life with the absolute certainty that his desires will be fulfilled simply because he has expressed them. 4 years at Millbrook High have reinforced this belief through a series of victories, both academic and social, creating a young man who views resistance as temporary confusion rather than genuine opposition. "New girl's been here a month and still hasn't talked to anyone," he murmurs to Landon Hayes, who sits beside him, consulting his phone beneath his desk. The whispered conversation carries just enough volume to ensure Dakota hears every word, a calculated decision designed to create social pressure. Landon glances up from his device where he's been conducting digital reconnaissance with the thoroughness of someone whose father sits on the federal bench. Judge Harrison Hayes has taught his son that information represents the most valuable currency in any social system. And Landon has inherited both his father's sharp intellect and his understanding of how to weaponize knowledge against opponents. Dakota Rivers, he reports quietly, transferred from Riverside Academy across town after some kind of family situation. Mother remarried. Stepfather got a job here. Standard story. But here's what's interesting. There's a 6-month gap in her enrollment records that nobody bothers to explain. Braden's interest sharpens immediately. Gaps in personal history represent opportunities for exploitation, especially when combined with the obvious vulnerability of social isolation. His psychological profile has been shaped by years of getting everything he wants through a combination of charm, intimidation, and the implied threat of consequences that his family's influence can arrange. Think she's hiding something scandalous? The question carries hopeful anticipation. Everyone's hiding something, Landon replies with the cynical wisdom of someone who has blackmailed classmates since middle school. Question is whether it's useful to us. Behind them, Colton Reed stretches his massive frame in a desk designed for smaller humans. His Letterman jacket straining across shoulders that have broken offensive lines and emergency room equipment with equal efficiency. As the son of Police Chief Robert Reed, Colton understands that physical advantages can accomplish things that money and influence cannot, and his scarred hands rest on his desk like weapons waiting to be deployed. Dakota's pencil pauses in its note-taking as she processes the conversation happening behind her. Her training has taught her to recognize threat assessment in its early stages, and the calculated nature of their discussion triggers alarm systems that most teenagers don't possess. The tremor returns to her hands as she forces herself to continue writing, each letter now requiring conscious effort to maintain the same precision. The bell rings with jarring suddenness, and students flood toward the exits with the relieved energy of people escaping confinement. Dakota gathers her belongings with economical movements, but Braden's approach blocks her path to the door with the casual authority of someone claiming territorial rights. Dakota, right? His voice carries practiced charm, backed by the confidence of someone who has never encountered genuine rejection. I'm Braden Cross. My father's Senator Cross. Maybe you've heard of him. She meets his gaze with polite neutrality that reveals nothing about her internal calculations. Nice to meet you. The response is perfectly courteous and completely dismissive, a combination that Braden's psychology has difficulty processing. In his experience, beautiful girls either flock toward power or seek protection from it. Dakota's indifference suggests either remarkable confidence or dangerous naivety, both of which intrigue him in ways that bypass his usual rational decision-making. We were thinking you might want to sit with us at lunch, he continues, gesturing toward Landon and Colton with the assumption that his offer represents a privilege rather than a potential threat. New students can have trouble finding their place here. Dakota's smile contains no warmth whatsoever. I appreciate the offer, but I prefer eating alone. Helps me process new environments more effectively. She steps around him with fluid grace and disappears into the hallway crowd before he can formulate a response. Behind her, the three boys exchange glances that communicate volumes about wounded pride and escalating interest. Braden Cross has just experienced something entirely outside his previous understanding of how social dynamics operate, and the unfamiliar sensation of rejection begins, transforming into something far more dangerous. Chemistry class in room 118 provides Dakota with her first glimpse of why Millbrook High's academic reputation extends beyond its athletic achievements. Mr. Dr. Chen demonstrates molecular bonding with enthusiasm that makes even advanced concepts accessible. And Dakota finds herself genuinely engaged with material that connects to training she received during those missing 6 months that Landon has identified. She chooses a lab station in the back corner, her positioning providing clear sightlines to both entrances while keeping her back protected. To casual observers, she appears to simply prefer natural light from the tall windows, but her tactical awareness reveals itself in the way her eyes periodically scan the room with systematic thoroughness. Emma Torres occupies the station beside her, a slight girl with nervous energy who keeps glancing toward the door as if expecting unwelcome visitors. Her anxiety becomes more pronounced when Braden's crew enters the classroom with the casual arrogance of students who believe rules apply differently to them. You're the new girl, Emma whispers as they begin their assigned experiment measuring reaction rates. Her voice carries the cautious hope of someone who has spent months sitting alone and recognizes a potential ally. I'm Emma Torres. Dakota nods while carefully measuring chemicals with precision that impresses Mr. Chen from across the room. Dakota Rivers, nice to meet you. Listen, Emma continues, her voice dropping even lower as she notices Braden watching their interaction with predatory focus. Those guys behind us, just stay away from them, okay? They're not who they pretend to be. The warning triggers Dakota's training in reading social dynamics and threat assessment. Emma's body language suggests personal experience with whatever danger she's referencing. And the way she unconsciously touches her left wrist indicates physical intimidation has been involved. What do you mean? Dakota asks while appearing to focus entirely on their chemical reactions. Emma's laugh contains no humor. Braden and his friends run this school through fear. They pick targets, usually girls who won't fight back, and make their lives miserable until they transfer or drop out. I lasted 8 months before my parents got involved. Dakota's hands remain steady as she adds drops of indicator solution, but her pulse accelerates as she recognizes patterns that extend far beyond typical teenage bullying. The systematic approach Emma describes suggests coordinated psychological warfare rather than random cruelty. What happened to you? Podos, Emma whispers, her face flushing with remembered humiliation. Landon's good with technology. He got pictures of me changing after gym class, then used them to control me. Said if I didn't do what they wanted, the photos would end up everywhere. Dakota's grip tightens on her beaker until her knuckles turn white. The casual violation of privacy and dignity that Emma describes triggers protective instincts that she spent months learning to suppress. Her father's voice echoes in her memory. Some people take advantage of kindness, sweetheart. That's when kindness becomes weakness. How did it end? My dad's a lawyer. When he found out what was happening, he threatened to destroy their families legally. But most kids don't have that kind of protection. The conversation ends abruptly as Mr. Chen approaches their station to check their progress, but Dakota has already gathered enough intelligence to understand the threat profile she's facing. These aren't typical high school bullies driven by insecurity or social awkwardness. They represent a systematic operation designed to exploit vulnerability for entertainment and control. Lunch period arrives with the chaos typical of teenage hunger and social maneuvering. The cafeteria buzzes with conversations about weekend plans, homework assignments, and the eternal drama of teenage relationships, while students navigate the unspoken territorial boundaries that govern their social ecosystem. Dakota chooses a table in the northeast corner, positioning herself with her back to the wall and clear sight lines to every entrance. Her tray contains a simple turkey sandwich, an apple, and water, the kind of efficient nutrition that prioritizes function over enjoyment. She eats with mechanical precision while observing the social dynamics playing out around her. The corner table provides acoustic advantages as well, allowing her to monitor conversations happening throughout the cafeteria while appearing to focus on her meal. Her jacket remains zipped despite the room's warmth, and she keeps her sleeves pulled down with the unconscious habitual motion of someone protecting secrets. Braden Cross occupies the table traditionally reserved for Millbrook's athletic elite Dios. His crew arranged around him like a court attending their king. Their conversation carries the casual cruelty that comes with absolute certainty that consequences don't apply to them, and their laughter has edges sharp enough to cut. She's sitting alone again, Landon observes while consulting his phone with focused attention. His digital investigation has yielded interesting results that require sharing with the group. I've been digging deeper into her background. The transfer story checks out, but there are still those missing months that don't add up. Colton cracks his knuckles while studying Dakota with the analytical attention he typically reserves for opposing quarterbacks. Maybe she was in rehab? Rich girl drug problems, daddy issues, typical stuff. Or witness protection, Braden suggests his imagination constructing scenarios that justify his growing obsession with someone who has dared to reject his attention. Family involved in something criminal had to disappear for a while. Axel Romano, the group's psychological strategist, leans forward with interest. Where the others rely on obvious advantages like wealth and physical intimidation, Axel specializes in finding the precise words that can destroy confidence, create doubt, or inspire paralyzing fear. Doesn't matter what she's hiding, he says quietly. What matters is that she thinks she can ignore us and get away with it. That kind of disrespect spreads if we don't address it immediately. Braden stands with fluid grace, adjusting his Letterman jacket with practiced motion of someone preparing for a performance. His approach to conquest follows patterns refined through years of psychological warfare disguised as social interaction. And Phase 1 involves overwhelming charm backed by obvious status and implied threats. He crosses the cafeteria with measured steps, his movement causing conversations to pause as students recognize the significance of his trajectory. Braden Cross doesn't approach random tables without specific intentions, and the anticipation of drama spreads through the room like electricity before a storm. Dakota continues eating her sandwich with the same methodical precision, seemingly oblivious to the attention focused on her corner table. She doesn't look up when his shadow falls across her meal, though her peripheral vision tracks his companions as they spread out in supporting positions. Mind if we join you? His voice carries the practiced charm that has opened doors throughout his academic career, though the question remains rhetorical. He's already pulling out chairs for his crew. Actually, I do mind. Dakota's response comes without hesitation or the usual flutter that accompanies interactions with Millbrook's aristocracy. She continues, eating with mechanical efficiency. I prefer eating alone. The rejection is so direct, so completely unexpected that Braden actually pauses in the act of sitting down. In 4 years at Millbrook High, no one has ever simply told him no when he's made a polite social request. His brain struggles to process this new experience while his wounded pride begins transforming into something more dangerous. "I don't think you understand how things work here," he continues, settling into the chair despite her objection. "I'm Braden Cross. My father represents this state in the United States Senate. I decide who succeeds socially at this school." Dakota finally raises her eyes, meeting his gaze with steady assessment that holds no trace of the awe or nervousness that typically accompanies his introductions. Instead, she studies him with clinical detachment as if he were a specimen requiring analysis, rather than a person demanding respect. "Fascinating," she says, returning to her meal. "And I'm Dakota Rivers. My father served this country in ways that matter. I decide who gets to interrupt my lunch." The comeback is delivered with surgical precision, each word calculated for maximum psychological impact while revealing nothing about the training that allows her to remain calm under pressure that would break most teenagers. Braden's face flushes red as his own techniques are turned against him with compound interest. Landon appears at his shoulder, recognizing the signs of escalation and moving to provide support. His presence serves multiple functions, demonstrating Braden's backing while gathering intelligence about this unexpected resistance that threatens their established social order. "I'm sorry about my friend here," Landon interjects with practiced diplomacy. He's not used to meeting girls with actual standards. "I'm Landon Hayes. My father sits on the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals." Dakota's expression doesn't change as she processes this additional information about the power structure she's dealing with. Her training has taught her to recognize institutional corruption when it reveals itself, and the casual name-dropping suggests coordination between their families that extends beyond typical networking. "Congratulations on your genetic lottery success," she replies evenly. "Now both of you can leave." Colton joins them, his massive frame effectively blocking Dakota's most direct path to the exit. His positioning isn't threatening yet, merely noticeable, but the psychological pressure begins accumulating as other students realize they're witnessing something unprecedented in Millbrook's social hierarchy. "Actually, Dakota," Landon says, emphasizing her name with subtle mockery while producing his phone with practiced efficiency, "I've been researching your background. Interesting gaps in your digital history, no social media presence, no tagged photos from friends, no online footprint at all until about 6 months ago." For the first time, Dakota's mechanical eating pattern hesitates. The pause lasts exactly 2 seconds before she resumes cutting her apple into precise segments. But Landon's trained eye catches the momentary tension that confirms he's identified a pressure point worth exploiting. "Some people value privacy," she responds, her voice maintaining the same level tone despite the internal alarm systems that Landon's investigation has triggered, especially when their families work in sensitive positions. "Sensitive how?" Braden leans forward, his mask of charming sophistication finally slipping to reveal something harder underneath. The rejection has progressed beyond mere inconvenience to active challenge, threatening the social order he spent years establishing through careful cultivation of fear and respect. Dakota sets down her plastic knife with deliberate precision, placing it parallel to her tray with exactness that suggests military protocols rather than cafeteria etiquette. When she turns to face the 3 boys surrounding her table, her smile contains no warmth whatsoever, but rather the cold calculation of someone evaluating threat levels and response options. "Here's what's going to happen," she says quietly, her voice carrying a different quality now that makes Colton unconsciously step backward despite his size advantage. "You're going to return to your table, continue your little power games with people who find them entertaining, and pretend this conversation never occurred." Watching her sit there surrounded by 3 guys who basically control this school, staying calm while they try to intimidate her into submission, what would you have done in her position? Would you have tried to defuse the situation or stood your ground like Dakota? Drop a comment below because this moment changes everything. The threat is delivered with such casual confidence that for a moment none of them respond. The idea that someone half their size and outnumbered 3-1 would offer ultimatums seems absurd enough to qualify as performance art, yet something about Dakota's posture suggests capabilities that extend far beyond typical teenage bravado. Braden stands as well, his height advantage allowing him to tower over Dakota in a display of physical intimidation that has cowed dozens of previous targets. His hand moves toward her arm, intending to grab her wrist and demonstrate his control over the situation through physical dominance. His fingers never make contact. Dakota's movement is so subtle, so economical that witnesses disagree about what exactly happens. Her body shifts almost imperceptibly, Her weight redistributes with fluid grace, and suddenly Braden finds himself stumbling backward into his chair as his intended grab meets empty air. The motion appears accidental, like he simply lost his balance. But the sharp intake of breath from all three boys suggests otherwise. "Oops," Dakota says mildly, gathering her belongings with unhurried efficiency. "These floors can be slippery. You should be more careful." She stands and moves toward the exit with measured steps, her posture unchanged despite the confrontation that has just concluded. Behind her, Braden's crew remains in various states of confusion and wounded pride, their established patterns of dominance temporarily disrupted by someone who refuses to acknowledge their authority. But as Dakota reaches the cafeteria doors, Braden's voice carries across the room with deadly promise. "This isn't over, new girl. Not even close." Dakota pauses without turning around, her hand resting on the door handle while every student in the cafeteria holds their breath. When she finally speaks, her words carry a certainty that makes several witnesses reach for their phones to start recording. "No," she agrees quietly, "it's not." The afternoon classes pass with deceptive calm, but beneath the surface, invisible currents of tension flow through Millbrook High's corridors like electrical charges before a storm. Dakota moves between American literature and advanced physics. With the same measured pace, her oversized jacket concealing more than just her physical form, as whispered conversations follow in her wake. Word of the cafeteria confrontation spreads through the school's communication networks with viral efficiency. Text messages, social media posts, and hushed hallway conversations transform a simple lunch encounter into legend. The new girl who dared to dismiss Braden Cross becomes the subject of speculation, admiration, and growing concern among students who understand the inevitable consequences of challenging Millbrook's established power structure. Emma Torres finds Dakota at her locker between classes, her nervous energy more pronounced than usual as she glances repeatedly over her shoulder. Her experience with Braden's crew has taught her to recognize the signs of escalation, and everything about the current situation suggests dangerous territory ahead. "You need to be careful," she whispers urgently while pretending to organize her textbooks. "After what happened at lunch, they're going to come after you harder." Braden doesn't let anyone embarrass him without payback. Dakota's hands remain steady as she exchanges books, but her peripheral vision tracks movement throughout the hallway with systematic thoroughness. Her training has taught her to recognize when surveillance transitions from casual to operational, and the number of students paying attention to her activities has increased exponentially since lunch. "What's the worst they've done to someone?" she asked quietly, though her tone suggests professional interest rather than personal fear. Emma's face pales as memories surface that she spent months trying to suppress. Last year, there was a girl named Sarah Chen who refused to cheat on a test for Landon. They made her life so miserable that she attempted suicide and had to be hospitalized. Her family moved across the country afterward. The information triggers something cold and dangerous in Dakota's chest. A familiar rage that she spent years learning to control. Her father's voice echoes through her memory. "Anger is a tool, sweetheart. But tools are only useful when you choose how to use them." "How did they do it?" Systematically, Emma explains, her voice dropping even lower. "Social isolation first, spreading rumors about her being mentally unstable, then cyber harassment through fake accounts. Finally, they planted drugs in her locker and called in an anonymous tip to her parents and the police." Dakota's grip tightens on her textbook until her knuckles turn white beneath her sleeves. The calculated cruelty that Emma describes represents something far more dangerous than typical teenage bullying. These boys have weaponized their privileges to destroy lives with the methodical precision of professional operations. Where are they now? Braden got early admission to Princeton. Landon's headed to Harvard Law. Colton has football scholarships from 12 different universities. Emma's bitter laugh contains years of accumulated frustration. Nothing ever touches them because their families own this town. The final bell rings, signaling the end of the academic day and the beginning of after-school activities. Students flood toward exits and athletic facilities with the relieved energy of people escaping confinement. But Dakota moves against the current toward the school's quieter sections where surveillance becomes more difficult. She chooses the old gymnasium, a building that predates modern security systems and provides acoustic isolation from the main campus. Her decision appears random, but actually follows tactical protocols for controlling engagement environments when confrontation becomes inevitable. The gymnasium's interior echoes with decades of athletic achievement in student memories. Its hardwood floors scarred by countless games and celebrations. Dakota positions herself in the center of the space, her back to no walls but with clear sight lines to every entrance. To casual observers, she appears to be simply enjoying the afternoon sunlight streaming through high windows. But her posture suggests readiness for something far more serious than nostalgia. Braden Cross enters first, his movement deliberate and predatory as he surveys the empty gymnasium with satisfaction. Behind him, Landon and Colton spread out in a formation that blocks the main exits while leaving emergency doors accessible. Their tactical positioning reveals planning and coordination that extends beyond spontaneous teenage drama. Smart choice of location, Braden observes, his voice carrying cold authority that promises violence rather than mere psychological intimidation. Private, soundproof, no witnesses to misinterpret what happens next. Dakota remains motionless in the center of the gymnasium, though her weight shifts almost imperceptibly to the balls of her feet. Her jacket hangs loose around her frame, concealing the subtle adjustments in muscle tension that prepare her body for explosive movement. "You said this wasn't over," she replies evenly. "I assumed you'd want to finish whatever conversation we started." Landon produces his phone, angling it to capture the scene while maintaining distance from potential physical confrontation. His role as documentarian serves multiple purposes: creating evidence for blackmail while providing legal protection through selective editing of whatever violence follows. "Actually," he says with practiced smugness, "we've been researching your background more thoroughly. Those missing months in your academic record. We found some interesting connections to juvenile detention facilities and psychiatric treatment centers." The lies are delivered with confident authority that has convinced administrators and parents in previous operations. Landon's understanding of institutional psychology allows him to construct narratives that align with adult expectations about troubled teenagers and family dysfunction. Dakota's expression doesn't change, though something flickers behind her eyes that makes Colton unconsciously step backward despite his size advantage. Her training has prepared her for psychological warfare far more sophisticated than anything these boys can devise. But maintaining her cover requires careful balance between apparent vulnerability and hidden strength. "That's a fascinating story," she says quietly. Completely fictional but creative. Braden steps closer, his height advantage allowing him to tower over her in a display of physical intimidation that has broken stronger personalities than Dakota's apparent composure. His proximity forces her to acknowledge his presence while limiting her movement options in what he believes represents tactical superiority. "Here's what's going to happen," he begins, his voice dropping to what he considers his most threatening register. "You're going to apologize for embarrassing us in front of the entire school. Then you're going to accept certain social arrangements that will demonstrate your proper understanding of how things work here." Dakota tilts her head slightly, studying him with clinical detachment that suggests evaluation rather than fear. "What kind of social arrangements?" Colton cracks his knuckles while moving to block her path toward the emergency exits. His massive presence designed to eliminate escape routes and create psychological pressure through implied physical dominance. His scarred hands flex in anticipation of violence that has become inevitable, the kind that involve you understanding your place in our social structure. He rumbles with satisfaction, starting with some private time to discuss your attitude problem. The threat crosses boundaries that justify defensive action under any legal standard. Though Dakota's mission parameters require her to gather more evidence before responding with potentially serious force, her phone, concealed within her jacket pocket, has been recording since she entered the gymnasium. "And if I refuse, then things become unpleasant very quickly," Braden promises, producing a manila folder filled with documents that appear to be official law enforcement reports. The papers represent sophisticated forgeries designed to support whatever narrative becomes necessary to destroy her reputation and legal standing. These documents detail your involvement in drug trafficking, assault charges, and psychiatric evaluations that question your stability and fitness for attending public school. Landon explains with practiced authority. "One phone call to the right people and your academic career ends permanently." Dakota's jacket shifts slightly as she adjusts her stance, the movement revealing a glimpse of ink beneath her sleeve that makes Braden lean forward with sudden interest. The partial visibility appears accidental, but actually represents calculated revelation, designed to trigger the escalation that will justify everything she's about to do. "You're making a mistake," she says quietly, her voice carrying a different quality now that makes the gymnasium's acoustics seem suddenly oppressive. "But I suppose everyone learns from their mistakes eventually." Something in her tone triggers Braden's instinct for violence, the psychological pressure of sustained resistance finally overwhelming his need for dominance through intimidation alone. He lunges forward with aggressive confidence, his hands reaching for her shoulders in a move designed to demonstrate physical control over someone he perceives as helpless. But his fingers never make contact. Dakota's response begins with a subtle shift in weight distribution that transforms her apparent vulnerability into perfect combat positioning. Her left hand deflects his grab while her right elbow drives backward into his solar plexus with surgical precision, emptying his lungs and dropping him to his knees as he gasps for air that refuses to return. Colton charges forward with devastating momentum, his massive frame moving like a freight train toward what he believes represents easy prey. Dakota sidesteps his rush with fluid grace while extending her leg at precisely the right angle to redirect his own force into the gymnasium's brick wall with a sound like breaking furniture. Landon abandons his position near the entrance, fumbling for something in his jacket pocket while his phone clatters to the floor. Dakota's messenger bag swings in a precise arc that catches him across the temple with enough force to render him unconscious before he understands what happened. The entire confrontation lasts exactly 4 seconds according to the timestamp on Landon's fallen phone, which has been live-streaming their planned assault to an audience that witnesses something completely different than expected. Dakota stands among 3 unconscious boys, her breathing controlled and her posture relaxed despite the violence that just concluded. Her jacket has shifted during the brief combat, revealing the intricate military tattoo that covers her right forearm. The design features an eagle with outstretched wings above the motto, "Leave no one behind" in precise script. The insignia of the 82nd Airborne Division rendered with artistic skill that suggests professional work rather than teenage rebellion. Brayden regains consciousness first, his vision clearing to find Dakota crouched beside him with clinical concern rather than triumph. Her proximity allows him to see details that casual observation had missed. The surgical precision of scars on her knuckles. The way she moves with economic grace that suggests training far beyond self-defense classes. "My father was Staff Sergeant Michael Rivers," she explains quietly, while checking his pulse with professional competence. "He died in Afghanistan conducting operations you'll never read about in newspapers. He taught me that some people only understand one language." She stands and retrieves Landon's phone, ending the live stream that has been broadcasting their humiliation to unknown audiences before turning her attention to the evidence they brought to intimidate her. The forged documents disappear into her jacket pocket as proof of federal crimes that will justify everything that follows. "You chose violence," she continues, her voice carrying absolute certainty. "I simply spoke it more fluently." Emma Torres appears in the gymnasium doorway with perfect timing, her phone already documenting the aftermath, while her expression shows satisfaction rather than surprise. Her nervous energy has been replaced by the confidence of someone whose patience has finally been rewarded. "I called 911, she announces, though her tone suggests the emergency services represent justice rather than rescue. "Told them 3 boys attacked a girl and got hurt trying to assault her." Dakota nods appreciation while adjusting her jacket to conceal the tattoo that has revealed more truth than her cover story can accommodate. Her mission has succeeded beyond original parameters, but maintaining operational security requires careful management of witness testimony and evidence. "Thank you," she says simply, though the words carry depths of meaning that Emma recognizes immediately. Police sirens wail in the distance as Dakota surveys the unconscious forms of Millbrook High's former power structure. Brayden Cross lies curled around his injured abdomen. Landon Hayes bleeds from a head wound that will require stitches, and Colton Reed remains motionless against the brick wall that stopped his charge. "Will they be okay?" Emma asks, though her concern appears perfunctory. "They'll recover," Dakota confirms with clinical assessment. "Bruised pride heals faster than broken bones, and I was careful not to cause permanent damage." The first police car arrives with flashing lights and urgent sirens, followed quickly by paramedics who begin assessing injuries, while Emma provides witness testimony that establishes clear self-defense. Her phone video captures Dakota being attacked by 3 larger opponents, the violence of their assault, and her minimal response that ended the confrontation without excessive force. Within an hour, the gymnasium fills with investigators, medical personnel, and school administrators trying to understand how Millbrook's most powerful students ended up unconscious after attacking a girl who weighs half what any of them does. The physical evidence tells an unambiguous story of assault and justified self-defense, while the forged documents in Dakota's possession provide grounds for federal investigation. Principal Matthews arrives with the harried expression of someone whose career depends on managing crises that threaten the school's reputation and his personal livelihood. His immediate focus centers on damage control rather than justice. A priority that becomes obvious when he begins questioning Dakota's actions rather than addressing the assault she survived. Miss Rivers, he begins with practiced authority. I understand you've been involved in an altercation that resulted in serious injuries to 3 of our students. Can you explain what happened here? Dakota's response comes with calm precision that impresses the investigating officers. 3 boys cornered me in an isolated location, threatened me with fabricated criminal charges, and attempted physical assault. I defended myself using minimal necessary force to neutralize the threat they represented. The explanation aligns perfectly with witness testimony and physical evidence, while demonstrating understanding of legal terminology that suggests familiarity with law enforcement procedures. Detective Sarah Williams, who leads the investigation, recognizes training that extends far beyond civilian self-defense courses. Where did you learn to fight like that? She asks with professional curiosity. My father taught me basic self-defense before his military deployment, Dakota replies, maintaining her cover story while acknowledging capabilities that cannot be hidden. He said preparation prevents victimization. The investigation concludes with charges filed against Braden, Landon, and Colton for conspiracy, assault, and attempted extortion. The forged documents trigger federal involvement, and within days, FBI agents arrive to investigate criminal enterprises that extend far beyond high school harassment. 2 weeks later, Dakota sits in the school library reading university brochures she'll never need, while Emma approaches with newspaper articles detailing the expanding investigation. Senator Cross announces his resignation amid corruption allegations. Judge Hayes recuses himself from all pending cases, and Police Chief Reed faces internal affairs review for obstruction of justice. 47 students have come forward with testimony about systematic harassment, Emma reports with satisfaction. Your phone recording triggered the federal investigation that's bringing down their entire network. Dakota nods while gathering her belongings with practiced efficiency. Her mission has exceeded all operational parameters, dismantling a criminal conspiracy while maintaining her cover identity. But success brings complications that require careful management. Are you leaving? Emma asks, recognizing signs of departure preparation. My family's moving, Dakota explains, which contains enough truth to avoid detection while concealing operational necessities. Fresh start somewhere new. As she walks toward the library exit, Dakota's phone buzzes with a message from an unlisted number. The text contains coordinates she recognizes from classified briefings, followed by a crown symbol that confirms her Millbrook success has attracted attention from international criminal organizations. Her next assignment waits in California, where similar patterns of privileged corruption require investigation and dismantling. The war her father died fighting continues in boardrooms and prep schools rather than foreign battlefields, but the mission remains unchanged. Leave no one behind, especially those who cannot defend themselves. Dakota deletes the message and drives toward the airport, where transportation waits to carry her toward challenges that make Braden Cross's crew look like amateur hour. Behind her, Millbrook High rebuilds while implementing security measures designed to prevent future infiltration. Unaware that their nightmare was just one small battle in a much larger war, the rental car's rearview mirror reflects a town that will never fully understand what saved it from years of systematic corruption. Local news reports focus on the dramatic arrests and federal investigation, but they miss the deeper truth about how quickly privilege can transform into predatory behavior when left unchecked. Dakota's intervention prevented Braden's crew from graduating into their father's criminal networks, breaking a cycle that would have destroyed countless more lives. Her phone rings with a call from a number that doesn't appear in any directory. She answers without speaking, listening to a voice that carries authority earned through decades of dangerous operations, protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Exceptional work, Agent Rivers. The intelligence you gathered triggered 14 additional investigations across 7 states. The Millbrook operation was smaller than we initially assessed, but your methods exceeded all expectations. Dakota merges onto the highway leading away from the town that briefly became her battlefield. How many more schools? Reconnaissance suggests 43 institutions compromised by similar networks. Privileged families using academic environments to recruit the next generation of organized crime. Your success proves our infiltration protocols work against targets who believe teenagers pose no threat. Through her side window, Dakota watches suburban neighborhoods where families sleep peacefully, unaware that their children's schools have become recruiting grounds for operations that would challenge veteran federal agents. Her mission represents a new front in an ancient war between those who protect the innocent and those who exploit vulnerability for profit and entertainment. California assignment parameters. Tech executive's daughter transferred from boarding school after family tragedy. Similar psychological profile to your Millbrook cover, but adapted for West Coast demographics. The target operates through social media manipulation rather than physical intimidation, but the underlying criminal structure remains identical. Dakota's reflection in the windshield shows a 17-year-old girl whose appearance conceals training that most Special Forces operators would respect. Her father's sacrifice created the foundation for everything she has become, transforming personal tragedy into operational capability that serves something larger than individual revenge. At Millbrook High, Emma Torres walks through hallways where conversations no longer carry undertones of fear and systematic cruelty. The federal investigation has exposed corruption that reached into every aspect of the school's administration, creating opportunities for genuine reform rather than cosmetic changes designed to satisfy worried parents. She pauses at Dakota's former locker, now occupied by another transfer student who will never face the harassment that once made education secondary to survival. The brass nameplate that briefly read D. Rivers has been replaced, but Emma remembers every detail about the girl who proved that strength comes in forms that bullies never expect. Principal Matthews submitted his resignation after investigators discovered his deliberate ignorance of systematic harassment that generated donations from grateful criminal families. His replacement, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, brings experience from schools that prioritize student safety over prestigious reputations and athletic achievements. The new security protocols include mandatory reporting procedures for harassment complaints, independent investigation processes that bypass local law enforcement, and federal oversight designed to prevent future infiltration by organized criminal networks masquerading as privileged families. But Emma understands truths that official reports cannot acknowledge. Dakota Rivers was never really a transfer student seeking peaceful education. Her presence at Millbrook represented surgical intervention designed to excise corruption before it metastasized into something that decades of traditional law enforcement had failed to address. The private jet waiting at the regional airport bears corporate logos that suggest legitimate business rather than classified government operations. Dakota boards without luggage beyond a single messenger bag containing documents that will establish her next identity and operational parameters for dismantling criminal networks that have operated with impunity for generations. Her father's photograph remains tucked inside the bag's hidden compartment, along with the medal the Army presented to her mother at his funeral. Staff Sergeant Michael Rivers died, believing that some sacrifices protect freedoms that most people never realize they possess. His daughter continues that mission in classrooms and cafeterias where predators wear Letterman jackets instead of enemy uniforms. As the aircraft climbs toward cruising altitude to Dakota, reviews intelligence files about her next targets while the lights of Millbrook fade into darkness below. Somewhere in California, privileged teenagers are planning harassment campaigns against vulnerable classmates, unaware that their activities have attracted attention from operatives trained to end threats before they become tragedies.